This is Abnormal Entertainment.
2, 3, 4.
Walked into the tunnel just to find the light. Hunted for old demons, looking for a fight. Looked up at the stars, seemed to go forever. There must be a way, it all fits together. Fell into the quicksand, held on to the vines. Never could quite color, stay within the lines. Feels like I have wings, I can fly wherever. This is just a way, it all fits together. Finally saw the world through rose-colored glasses. Gonna share my journey to small and large masses. Give up on my life, no sir, me never. This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together.
Hey everybody, this is Daniel Garza, and welcome to another episode of Put It Together. I'd like to start as usual thanking my producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers, for all his help and support. Thank you, sir. Inviting all of you to check us out at abnormalentertainment.com, where you can find all the shows on the network. Check me out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter under Daniel G. Garza or Little Mexican. You can find out what I'm doing, who I'm harassing, what shows are up, and what my guests are doing. So go check those out. Today, I am really excited. I've been wanting to interview this gentleman for a while. Hello, Dana.
Hello, Daniel.
I think that's about as civil as we've ever been to each other.
That's not true.
Dana is married to Beth. Some of you have heard me talk about Beth. I do all of my public speaking at schools with her. She hasn't been on the show. She's avoided me for a long time, but at some point I'll have her. She keeps saying no, but at some point she's going to say yes. Well, this is her husband in his own right. How you doing, Dana?
I'm doing well, and I said yes the first time.
Yes, you did. You're easy. Your wife is hard to get.
Yeah.
I met you probably about 3 years ago.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
When I was going through cancer 4 years ago.
Maybe a little bit longer, but yeah.
Yeah, and the first time we came over for dinner and met you, it was like instant harassment where there was just no ending, as far as I remember. Am I wrong?
Well, I think harassment's probably too strong a word. I would like to, view it as kind of, playful, sarcastic banter.
Sure, whatever you want to call it. But Dana is actually...
let me just say it's bad when you say that we talk about harassment when it's a white guy to...
a Mexican guy?
A Mexican guy. It might be a little bit misconstrued.
For those of you that followed the show for a while, and for those of you who are friends or followers of Dana for the first time, I'll say this on the record, you're one of my favorite people in the world.
Well, thank you.
Likewise. No matter what mood I'm in, when you guys invite us over, the moment we start talking, I just, everything just is gone. I forget about everything. It's the fact that you don't treat me any different for anything that I've been through in my life versus other people who might talk to me different or treat me differently or are always concerned about how I'm feeling and how I'm doing. I'm sure you do in your own way, but just the fact that we banter the moment I walk in, it's relaxing for me. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and I feel the same way. And we'll just have to do it more often.
So let's get started because you got to get going. We're shooting this on a day that he has an appointment. But Dana Mackie, tell us how you put it together.
Shortened version, long story. Moved to Southern California in 1987. Was all about a girl at the time. Met my wife up in Whistler, off at business. I won't get into that long story about how that all came about, because really at the end of the day she chased me. She doesn't want to admit it, but that, it kind of worked out that way. It's been a real interesting process. I think I always knew I wanted to be in the States from the time I was 13 or 14, raised in kind of a strict family where the view of the world was go get a job, work for 40 years and retire. Always kind of seemed a little bit, screwed up to me. I didn't necessarily know how I'd get out of that, mindset.
Right.
But I think inherently I knew I was more entrepreneurial. I didn't know what that meant or looked like at the time because I really had no role models. I had one friend growing up whose father had a business. Everybody else was, working at the pulp mill or the truck factory or all that, I'll say typical type of stuff. But I knew at some point, there had to be, for me anyway, there had to be a better way of at least walking through my career or developing a career. And I was really not school, necessarily looking at university, even though that was kind of pushed on to me going, hey, to be successful, you have to be somebody, college degree, all that other type of stuff that I really never had any niche that I looked at and went, okay, I needed to focus on that. So that was a big struggle for me. Always was, through my 20s, even after I got down here, it was, okay, that was definitely not not having a college degree because I really dropped out to take a job. But yeah, to circle back, I met Beth. She was living in Santa Barbara at the time.
Okay.
Long story short, some way figure out a way to weasel down my way down to California. Kind of figured out the whole immigration thing on my own through a couple lawyers. I circumvented a couple things, to be perfectly honest, at the time. Found a couple loopholes that worked actually in 1997 before immigration figured it out. Ultimately got married. Might have been a different story if I had not married the woman. Might have been back up in Canada and the story would be a little bit different. And before I came down, I said to her, I've got to have a job, right? And so at the time, her father introduced me to what is now my business partner. He needed some help running his consulting practice, which at the time was focused on going into financially distressed companies. They had another consulting aspect that went with that. He needed basically, a helper boy. So I jumped from a good government job I had up there, where I was kind of fast-tracked working for a government insurance company that was focused primarily, strictly on, auto insurance. It was all,
Okay.
it's all.
Now, how old were you then?
So this I'd be 26.
Okay.
So I moved here when I was 27.
Okay.
Okay, I sold all my stuff and moved. Everybody thought, hey, up there, California, great. And the other side of that was you're a little bit crazy. But at the time, I looked at it and went, hey, it's what's the risk? I had nothing else. So the risk was I had a really good government job and probably was going to get promoted and come back and start down here. And I went to work for this guy for $400 a week.
Wow.
No benefits, no nothing, all under the table. He'd pick me up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, or that's what I remember anyway. We'd drive up to L.A., do our client, get back late at night. I'd go over to his place in Dana Point at the time, and he'd teach me more about the business. We'd sit around on a Saturday. It was actually a Saturday, and we'd sit around in his backyard, and he'd start teaching me the nuances of this particular business.
Wow.
So it really was not something that was a textbook business. Because the focus ultimately ended up becoming, which I'm still doing to this day, is where we go into financially distressed companies all over the country and fix the balance sheet outside of a bankruptcy filing. So
at the time, did that interest you, or was it just a job?
it was more just a job. How did I survive?
Okay.
And it was really, and it became more and more interesting to me. But then it became more and more as you get married, have kids, everything else. Where okay, you got to enhance the survival prospects by making this a better business.
Got it.
Right. And so it wasn't anything I would say I got up in the morning and went, I'm passionate to go and deal with somebody else's shit all day long, because that's really what we were doing. We're
Right.
fixing somebody else's problems. And there's a lot of emotional things that went with that too. You've got, somebody owns a business is going sideways. They've got a lot on the line, and a lot of you learn quickly, a lot of the decisions you're making are based on the lesser of two evils for
Got it.
somebody, right? How do you mitigate the downside for somebody? So on and so forth. So it was really never a mainstream business, because it's not something you get your MBA in and go, well, how do we get in the mindset of this entrepreneur who's built this up and going, and we've got to, walk them through this decision tree about, what, if you do this, it's not a great outcome, but you do this, it's a better, not great outcome, but you need to do that type of stuff. And I think what really probably resonated for me when I look back on it from a skill set standpoint was the fact that I'm a solution-geared guy. So I could be, for the most part, non-emotional when I look at these things and go, okay, how do we get somebody through this and push hard through it, that type of thing. And that's the way my business partner is. He's, been in the trenches himself. So it's really pragmatic approach to this with a lot of, thought that goes behind, okay, if we move these, I kind of call it the chess game sometimes because it is somewhat like a chess game. You move the piece here, what's the overall impact on somebody's business and their life and so on and so forth.
Wow.
So, I wouldn't say it was anything where I went, ooh, I'm jumping up and down, to make $400 a week was significantly less than what I was making before. Learning a new business, adapting to being down here with a girlfriend that I really didn't know that well. So there's a lot of, when I look back on it, would I do it again? No. Because I look back on it when I probably, and there were times, of course, in the first 2 or 3 years, I'm going, what the hell am I doing here?
Right.
I had to go through that whole process. So I don't know whether I was just one of these guys that had a high degree of stick-to-itiveness or I was just plain naive and stupid and should have gone back to Canada. But it is what it is at this point.
But if you had, based on the first part of the conversation, if you had stayed, you would have stuck to that. Grow up, live, work for so long, you're done.
Yeah, and I think you look back on it and and the interesting part now is fast forward, I'm dealing with a potential deal out of my, hometown out of Vancouver 30 years later where I'm dealing with some guys that are about my age at the time I left. And I'm seeing some of the similar type of traits, even though they're entrepreneurial, but how they approach the business that was kind of pervasive, at least in my mind. Because I think Canadians in general, especially at the time, were a lot more reserved the way they looked at business in general, and there wasn't the same entrepreneurship. So when I got down here and I met Beth's brother as an example, who was a couple of years younger, and a couple of his friends that were, and I started to hang out with them a little bit and see what they were doing, and they were just out of college and they were in these deals and working for an accounting firm. There was it really dawned on me pretty quickly that it was exactly as I suspected it would be in coming to America, so to speak, in that it was kind of the sky's the limit. No one really looked at you and went, oh, you're 25, that can't be done.
Right.
Or you don't have a certain amount of age experience, so therefore you thinking that way is not justified. That didn't exist. It was, oh, you got the balls to go out and do something, go give it a shot. And so that was the right decision from that standpoint, because that dawned on me very, very quickly that it was a different mindset down here. And obviously it still is to this day. The old, land of opportunity cliche
right.
that everybody thought is actually true. Because you don't really experience it, I think, until you go to certain other countries where you go, oh yeah, there's a lot of roadblocks, and the roadblocks typically are more how people think, right? The mentality, but how they view you or view anybody else. That type of stuff. So that's the one thing where I went, oh, even though at the time it was overwhelming because, of course, I didn't grow up here. So I had no contacts. I had no people I went to college with. I had to start really all over to try to develop that at the same time I was still working and try to deal with somebody I really didn't even know from a business standpoint.
Right.
That was all the difficulties, and looking back on it. Was it the best way to make money at the time as far as overall versus staying in Canada? No. If I'd stayed there and moved up the ladder, obviously I would have had a more consistent, but conservative. Yeah, but it is what it is. And where I think, to fast forward through being with the same business partner, doing probably 150 different deals and assignments with this guy, and getting to the point now that I'm, 58 and I'm on the other side, still married, kids are on the other side, and I go, wow, I've got a lot of energy. I've got a lot more experience. I'm probably more passionate about trying to find something I really want to do now than I've ever been because of the experience and the fact I'm looking at it going, wow, there's a lot of more opportunity right now. What is it? And I can jump in on it full time. I don't have the family, obligations in the same way from a time, and you got to make money right back then. So
let me ask you, as long as we're talking about being 26 and just jumping in, basically, do you think 26-year-olds in this time frame today have that kind of
I always hate to make generalizations, but I think generally no. I mean, I think, I was, my parents didn't have a lot of money. And one thing my father always used to say to me, even though, there was trade-offs of this, but I won't get into my, personal story too much, but, he used to say, no one's going to hand you shit. If you're expecting someone to knock on the door and you're down and out, they're going to hand you a check, or you don't have to work hard. He goes, you're sadly mistaken. And that's always kind of stuck with me, that I've never really thought that, okay, someone's going to give you anything, so you don't have to go out there and try to, get it. Right. In some way, shape, or form, you have to go get it. And that was always, we were expected to work. I mean, classics. I mean, I was 11 years old doing a morning paper route up there where he was like, you want money? And, he kind of lied for me because I think he had to be 12. And so they gave me the shitty route and, where I grew up. And it was like, as I recall, my one, coming of age, working story, cliched working story.
We all have one of those.
Yeah, we all have, right? But, it was, waking up my younger brother because I had to get up at 3:30 and fold papers and ride out into this dark area, and I was scared off my ass, because I was riding out there and I had to deliver 16 papers for $16 a month, and the bonus was $16. And I used to bug the crap out of him because we'd stop at a Chevron station, excess papers. I'd give to the morning guy and he'd give us these, 3 liters of soda. I'll give you a bottle of soda, blah, blah, blah. And it worked sometimes, sometimes not. But I did that for a while. And I think, the other part of that was the fact that, I remember, it, just obviously sticks out ingrained in my mind, even though I couldn't do it as I went back to school and it was kind of a summer gig, was the fact that at the end of the day, when you got that bonus of $16 and you're getting $32 a month and you were 12 or 13 years old, especially back then, the level of satisfaction of it, having endured it, right? Going, okay, hey, I got some, as my father-in-law would call it, APM, ass pocket money, right? That was something that, sticks with you from, as far as going, okay, hey, you persevere, like anybody else's story versus getting handed shit. So to your question, yeah, my sense is right now, I think back to, we talked about this a little bit before the podcast started about entitlement. Right. I think there's more a sense of entitlement right now that, hey, I showed up, therefore I'm owed something. Yeah. And I was never, to me that, irks me to a certain extent.
The participation award.
Yeah, because look, I've made some money, I've lost some money, I've done some things right, I've done some things wrong, but the fact of the matter is, even till this day, I still pick up clients by cold calling. It's not beneath me to pick up the phone and go, okay, I got to hit, 20 or 30 people and pick up the phone and cold call. And I think if you come from that, it's really hard to look at somebody else and goes, okay, I showed up, and not go, okay, I get a little bit irked, or how are you going to make it, or, so on and so forth, or someone tells you why they can't do it or can't show up on time. Whole other discussion. Yeah. But yeah, to your point, I think it's definitely, but I think it all comes back down to the same thing. I think the parenting's changed. Sure. We want our kids to have more than what we had. Therefore, we're going to be more on the friend side than the parent side. And I was raised pretty much old school as Beth was. And, I'm sure you had some of it too. My dad used to say, I'll talk to you, or I'll talk to you by hand. I mean, this day and age, like I said, I tell him now he's 82. I go, you just be getting out of jail now.
Yeah.
But, that was, for all of my friends, none of us ever really looked at the hard work thing because they all worked hard.
Right.
I mean, they all had family or had guys that were parents owned orchards. They'd go home after school and have to pick fruit till it was dark in September, October, November. It was not an option. You weren't like, hey, let's go play. You're like, no, shit, I got to go help dad, whatever. No one cried the blues. You just friggin' did it, right? That was a difference. So, but I know I got a little bit off track there, but.
No, but it makes sense.
But yeah, I think that a lot of that instilled in me, even though I have to admit that, back, you had an earlier question about, did I love it? No, you get into getting married and have kids, you go into, to a certain extent, you got to do what you got to do. I mean, I never really thought at times where, okay, is there something else I should be doing, or do I really have the option? Then yet the other side of that was we started to get some traction what we were doing, and we started to do pretty damn well for a guy that was a college dropout, and we were out there consulting to these businesses, everything else. Because I think we set the model up correctly. We always were always until this day have been of the mindset that you provide expertise and value, you don't get paid for time. Clients don't give a crap how much time you put into something. unlike a lot of other professions where you can put in time, you can bill somebody whether you've done something right or not. We've never worked that way. Our structure's always been predominantly based on success. So, from that standpoint, the success has always sometimes been where, it's been not a hell of a lot of time and you're real good at what you do and maybe you get a little bit lucky and you can make, a lot of money in a relatively short period of time. There's other times where we've worked real hard. You're in a distressed situation, doesn't work out that way. You're successful, there isn't the money to pay you. So that's always been kind of the balancing act in the situation. But, if I look back, would I have done something differently? I probably always been a sports guy. Probably would have ended up in sports management or something like that.
Had the time,
because I've always been kind of that. I won't say I'm a sports junkie, but that business with sports athletics is always something I was interested in. I got a little bit dissuaded out of that, which was someone had told me, don't confuse your passion for your hobby. And I always thought it was a hobby when it turned out it was probably more a passion. But I'll segue into something else. That's where I think mentors and role models, huge part for anybody trying to figure out what it is they really want to do, which I didn't really have a lot of. I had to figure out a lot of shit on my own. But I think that's when I look back, if I'd had a couple more people around me that were like, you know what? Hey, you got the opportunity to do this. You're smart enough. Go in and, try to do it. I might have changed my course a little bit, but, that's all, in hindsight, we're all friggin' perfect, right?
That's really interesting. Yeah, because I'm 47 and I definitely went through the paper route thing, and ours was Dairy Queen. We would stop at Dairy Queen in Texas and give them the leftovers, and we'd get like a little ice cream cone.
Or Blizzard?
Yeah, in Texas they have the little, the soft serve.
Yeah.
So
it was big in Canada, by the way. Dairy Queen was, was a big deal.
If the right girl was there, we left the papers. It's like, y'all want a soft serve to go? It's like, yay!
Yeah.
But yeah, and this is not to slam on. And I thought of millennials because I was actually checking the news this morning, and there was a thing about there's a Monopoly board game special for millennials now, where they start off with no money in the game. They have to make money along the way, and it's got less properties on it because apparently the game board says they don't have the attention span to play a whole game. So it's smaller. Yeah. I just thought it was funny.
I think that is funny. Yeah.
It's like, of course, a lot of mothers and millennials are all like, "Oh my God, like this is horrible."
Yeah,
of course you would.
Yeah. Everybody's offended by everything these days.
So I'll come back to that because I want to talk about that. But so you're in the business. How long in the business before you like, hey, I kick ass at this?
I don't think it really took that long. The one thing I got to say about my business partner was really good mentor. Even till this day, we're a really good yin and yang balance because I'm a bull and let's go, and he'll be like, let's take a step back and see how this plays out. And we've worked really well that way because we don't have long conversations or arguments. We just kind of go, he'll go and I go, yeah, good point. Let's do this. And that's why it's worked, right? I think I saw him when he got in it, and he went through his own struggles to get in the business, which is a whole other story. And then he was working really hard, very, very smart guy, and was doing well. I mean, really well. And we're not talking, $50,000, $60,000 a year. He was doing well from having this focus that I went, wow, there's something to this business. It's just really, it's always been finding the deals harder than doing the deal. Because it's, as I tell everybody, the beauty about the business is it's a highly specialized niche. The downside of the business is it's a highly specialized niche that is not easily definable for a lot of people because it's not something you can walk through a business textbook and go, okay, you do this, you do that, and do that. And we have a certain, what we've called over time, crafted a program, our own program about how we approach these deals, which is a little bit different than I think most, out there that might be considered competition for us, do it. Even though when we typically get referred into a deal, we don't have a lot of competition based on our track record, reputation, how we charge, all that other type of stuff. But when did I think when I started getting into, because I went into a couple, it took 2 or 3 or 4 years really, because I went through, got out of it, came back into it. There were some personnel things there that didn't jive for me. Went out and did my own thing. sold a couple deals on my own, which was, I think, 1 year I was out on my own and had the survival thing. I was cold calling. So I did a lot of small, tiny little deals consulting,
right.
where I was making $500 here, $1,000 there. And I think I sold 8 deals in 1 year off cold calls.
Wow.
And so I ended up going, I remember because I made that year, which is a long time ago, I made almost 100,000 doing it that way. And I was like, okay, I can do this. And then we reunited and kind of went, okay, how do we figure out the marketing part of this, which we continue to this day, have this discussion. We just had it the other day going, okay, what do we do in the marketing? Redo the website, what works, what doesn't work, which is the ongoing battle. But I think, it took me 3, 4, 5 years. But in the meantime, I really had no choice because, the one downside, the other issue with not getting a degree wasn't like I could walk in the U.S. and go, okay, I've got a commerce degree from the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, equivalent to a business degree. Okay, hire me. A lot of things, it was no different back then. I had really 2 years of college, took the job at the insurance company, moved back down here, and then it was, okay, who are you? So I really didn't have a lot of,
got it.
I had to make this happen, right? I really had to make it happen or I wasn't going to eat. And Beth and I got married. I was 29 when I got married, so I met her at 26, got married at 29, had a kid at 31. So within a 5-year period, all this happened, and
wow.
I was in it, and it was like, okay, how do you make this happen? Although at that point, I lucked out too, and I think it was 31. I got married 29, I had a kid at 31 and bought a condo. So I was obviously doing something right, but then there's a certain amount of luck too, based on what the market was doing back then. And
so more than on a personal level, I think I'm interested now as the conversation flows and actually telling people out there, you got to try different things before you really fall into your niche or into your...
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I get, Beth always bugs me as for the last 10 years. So I get calls from people going, what do you think, da, da, da. She says, oh, you should be, you give them all this advice and you don't get paid for coaching. I know it's part of my give back deal, but, based on of course, all I can do is base it on my experience. I think you got to get out there and, try things. I mean, nothing of what I'm saying is novel concept. I mean,
right.
but I think, everybody has got certain fears and you never really evolve, I think, until you push through some of those fears and go, okay, push the wall on the fears, that type of thing. And that means trying different things. Because at the end of the day, and I read this, I'm trying to think of the book I read, but the quote after 300 pages was, hey, look, everybody's got an expiration date. And, it's one thing, and I think you kind of come to, I think we all for me, it's been getting older, going, okay, I got, certain amount of time left. What is it you really want to do? I think I'm sure you've had things based on, traumatic physical events in your life, cancer, everything else going, okay, this is very real for me. So what I tell people, a lot of people is, what do you got to lose? You've got nothing to lose by trying different things, so on and so forth. I don't necessarily advocate people going, oh, quit my job and I'm going to run off and try something here. There's got to be a balance to where you kind of, but it's, it's what I would say. It's like anything, get moving. Even if it's in the wrong direction, get moving in somewhere where you go, okay, I'm doing it, rather than, a lot of people end up they're paralyzed by the analysis. There's too much. Well, what if? When sometimes you just got to go. It's like learning to run. You walk first, right? You got to take a step and walk if you've been sitting on the couch. Very rudimentary thought process. And I think the other big part is you've got to have people around you that are like-minded. That's, I think, the biggest thing. Where you get people around you that goes, fuck that guy. You know what? This is something you can do, and you know what? Or I'll do it with you. That type of. I think that's really, really important because you can emotionally get. I mean, I can jump off, and I love Tony Robbins. You can get emotionally pumped up, and you got 100 people around you going, and that's human nature. And then all these people go scatter, and what do you do next?
Right.
And that's why I like Tony a lot. Not to plug Tony, because what he talks about all the time is you got to have a plan. And where we see most people, back to my own business, where we see most people fail is they don't have a plan. Even when they're doing well, they don't have a plan. And I think people that want to change, do certain things, you got to go, okay, what do I do now? What do I do tomorrow? What do I do how do I go about this process? Even when I have naysayers around me, that's a difficult thing for a lot of people to get out of it, because everybody else is looking at somebody else going, well, my life's better, or their life is better, that type of stuff. But, you got to get out there and find those people that go, yeah, you know what? This is great what you're doing. And You can and put yourself out there. I mean, you and I spoke about this the other time you were over for dinner. Let's talk about comedians. I watch a lot of comedians on Netflix. I watch comedians, cars, everything else. And it's interesting when you listen to all the big guys, everybody else. And I think it's a great parallel here is they all talk about, hey, open mic night. We all had to start somewhere. I got booed off the stage. I was shitty. Oh, I went back. I saw Chris Rock go. First time he was going to go out and he was like, they told me I'd get on. I got there. It's, 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, wherever it was, and it was 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock, and you're not getting on. I waited around 8 hours and and I just stuck it out. Well, a lot of people would go, oh yeah, you're not going to put me on, you're not going to commit to it now, I'm walking out the door. So what is it with a guy like that or a lot of like those guys, which is probably one of the toughest jobs because you put yourself out there and people can look at you and pay and go, you suck. But you see that for all of them. You see all that consistency. That story is pervasive through all those guys. Right. That they versus somebody else stuck through it. And not that everybody's going to be funny, but they all had the same. Rodney Dangerfield was a friggin' door-to-door aluminum side sale, whatever his story was. He spent 10 years trying to be a comedian before he went from somebody who should have said 5 or could have said 5 years into it. How do you put your finger on? I don't know. I don't know what that is in somebody versus somebody else. But I would suspect he probably had somebody around him going, keep going, that type of stuff. And I think, and then there's other people that you can just get out there and, decide one day I'm going to run a marathon, right? But I think, generally speaking, you got to have people around you that buy into your process. Yeah,
because I remember being young, going to trade school. I didn't want to go to college. I just wanted to go to school, start working. Let's go. We got this. Yeah. And I went through this is back in 1990 when computer stuff was just really I learned Lexus 123.
Oh yeah, okay.
That was I was booting on DOS to turn on computers at school. That's how we learned. So I go way back. But my goal was to be in corporate. I wanted to be the manager of a floor and overlook people. I didn't care what, but that was the dream. And then corporate ate me up and spit me out and they're like, nope, this is not for you, kid. And I bounced around from job to job for years until I came to California. And then finally acting and okay, I'm going to pursue this, but what am I going to do in the meantime to keep my creativity going? And here's the podcast 6 years later. So,
wow.
So things, like you say, you kind of just have to keep going. What I tell folks, in addition to what you just mentioned, which I'm going to add to my repertoire, is don't wait for something like me. Don't wait for something life-changing to happen. Make your decisions life-changing. Yeah. Because I waited till cancer to really decide to go full forward on a lot more acting classes, the stand-up comedy classes. But I waited till cancer. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to do it. And so now I tell people, don't wait for life-changing moments. You make it. You decide when it's going to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because it's interesting you mentioned that because my business partner, which is Dave Kershaw, my Kershaw Mackie, but, he's always said to me, he goes, the biggest problem with those people is they just can't get going.
Yeah.
And he's right. They just can't get going. And he's somebody, by the way, that lives in Asia. He set up business in Asia, traveled all over the world. He's in his late 60s. He's a frontiersman in his own way because he's like, hey, I'm just going to go out there and do it. If it doesn't work, you can backpedal and try something else. And I think that's the biggest thing to your point is most people just can't get going because they're waiting for it to be complete. And it's never complete. There is never a straight line to any of this stuff in a lot of ways. I mean, there are some people that know. There's definitely people that, kids in high school that go, I want to be this and this is my passion. That definitely exists. For a lot of people that are, most people, you ask them where they got to now, it's been a kind of a zigzag, route as to how they've, got there and an event or whatever else it is. And even for me now, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. Because now I've got some options. I mean, I want to continue doing the business, but I got some other options. I'm not going to be somebody who's going to ride off into the sunset retiring. I'm not a golfer. I don't want to be, hitting a white ball around and going, that shit doesn't interest me at all.
I don't know that I can picture you.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's like people, invite me to golf and I go, why? What do you mean, why? I go, you're going to be so frustrated playing with me anyway. You're going to, well, why do we invite this guy? And it's 6 hours of my time to be that frustrated and $200. I go, this doesn't add up to me.
I'll meet you at the end.
Yeah, I'll meet you at the end. I mean, I'd rather, I'd rather go work out and do something else and for an hour and, that type of stuff. But
let me ask you, because obviously, well, how long have you been now in this business?
Well, really, when you look at the start, even with a couple,
right.
Because I did a little stint in investment banking that was related to this. I stepped out back between 2013 and 2015. I was working with an investment bank that did special situations restructuring, which is great. Was a whole other challenge for me. But if you include all that, it's basically been 30 years.
30 years. 30 years later, do the voices from when you were young, your parents telling you, this is what you should do with your life, do they still pop up?
Oh yeah. I mean, more my father, because I just listened to that, and even when he told me, I remember when I was 14. To tell you the truth, I remember I was 14. I was looking at my brothers and sisters, and I was looking at what my parents were doing, living paycheck to paycheck, and everything was, we will get this, if we can afford it or something. It was always that qualifier, right? And I kind of went, holy shit, I got to be able to make, because all money is choices. It doesn't make you a better person or anybody else. It's just choices. Not that material things necessarily change, but they do to a certain extent. But it's choices, and choices can also mean, oh, I'm not going to work today because I got money, or I'm going to go do this with money. But I looked at my parents and I went, okay, this is too fucking hard. And I was 14, and the interesting things, my siblings have never really made money.
Go ahead.
Never really made money, and but yeah, there's a lot of that resonates. I mean, it was also, and I've had this discussion with my mother. My mother's 80 years old, and she goes, "Yeah, I grew up with poverty mentality."
Yeah.
And she still got it to this day. I love her dearly, but she's got it to this day. And she's, openly talked about the mentality that was shoved by her parents, in that they always used to look down. They were homestead farmers, agriculture people in province of Saskatchewan. And I didn't even know this about her until last year when she was living with Beth and I, that, she was like, I suffer from poverty because my parents used to pound, oh, look at those rich people, or people who made money, they're, whatever. And
right.
It just something, so you realize it can go generation to generation, versus somebody's being told, hey, you can do whatever you want, so on and so forth. And I think that, not that my parents didn't ever go, okay, but I went through a couple divorces. My mother was divorced at 5, stepfather another 10 years. So I was kind of 15, 16, basically on my own. It wasn't like I had somebody going, hey, it was like, hey, pretty much figure this shit out for yourself. But yes, there are certain things that have definitely stuck with me. I think the biggest thing, as I mentioned earlier, is just my father was like, if you're not willing to work hard, and you know what, you can't, another thing I think he instilled in me was a stickler about time, about, okay, hey, showing up's great, but there's, big difference in 10 minutes. And I used to say, what the hell do you mean? Big difference between 5 minutes early and 5 minutes late. And, shit like that. And then no one's going to hand you shit. I mean, if you think, because if you think you're a white guy and someone's going to hand you, you're unemployed, ain't going to freaking happen. You better figure that out now. So I think those are probably from a work standpoint going, okay, even though I don't really work that hard this day and age, but you got to be, there are times where, you got to put the time in and do it when they've been, especially in this business. Somebody needs to talk to you on a Sunday night at 7:00. You don't go, or a client, you just don't go, well, I don't feel like talking to you. You got to make the time to do it because the client comes first, that type of shit. So, that stuff still resonates in my head loud and clear. And then there's a lot of stuff, obviously, he tried to preach down me where I think, he's completely full of shit. Yeah. Right? I mean, of course. But I think fortunately for me, overall, I've been able to extract the really, really good gems out of everything and hold that to a higher, hold that up here more so than all the other stuff that you might tend to forget about that was just, that black and white mentality is also something where they're like, okay, he wasn't a guy that was like, okay, go live your dream. That was the contrast to, hey, no one's going to hand you anything, go out and work hard, to, oh yeah, you know what, you want to go start your own business? Okay, well, that was foreign concept to him. Yeah, or my mother or anybody else, right? I mean, so.
I always tell people, because I've been labeled a workaholic, I don't know what they're talking about, but
That's why you get along so well with my wife.
Yeah, because we can go forever.
Go. Yeah,
forever.
you can go.
And it's not just somebody says, we're done. It's like, oh, okay. Or the calendar's like, oh, there's nothing else to do. And then I fall into this sadness. I'm like, I don't have anything else to do. My life is pointless. Oh, okay, till tomorrow. Tomorrow will be pointless again.
Yeah, right.
But my dad was like that. And I asked that question because until recently, I started to remember, like, all of a sudden my dad would get a phone call. And he'd be like, oh, yeah, I'll be there. My mom won't be like, well, where are you going? Well, somebody just, he had a lot of truck driver friends. One of my friends just pulled in, and it's late, and he needs help unloading. And they would pay him cash or whatever. And he'd come home with extra stuff, like vegetables, fruit, whatever they were unloading. And I just thought, like, my dad has the coolest friends. Because now we have all these boxes of candy. Like, awesome. Not realizing that that's what I do nowadays. People will call. It's like, hey, you want to do this gig? Sure, I'm there. How much does it pay? I don't care. Like, let's do it. It's money. Whatever it is, it's money in the pocket. Let's do it. And Christian's like, you're going to get up and go out for like $20. It's going to take you $10 gas to get there. But my logic is like, but I'm making $20. Like, I have to. Like, I'm going to have 10 more bucks after the gas. It makes sense to me in my head. But.
Well, there's another, not to interrupt you, but there's another aspect of that too that I think that people miss. I think depending on what you're looking at, you got to put yourself out there. I have the same thing. I have this, certain people around me that'll go, well, why do you go out? I had this one gig that I'm approaching completely entrepreneurial because I've started to really look at some entrepreneurial opportunities over time because of the people I know, and opportunities are now coming to me based on my experience and connections and everything else. So I was flying out, spend a day and a couple of days going out to basically check a deal out, meet all the other people. But it's like anything else. It's nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? People will go, well, the deal didn't turn out, you wasted your time. I go, well, what do you mean I wasted my time? I wouldn't have had a shot at the deal had I not gone out and met all the principals and done all this and showed them I'm serious and gone up there and brought a team up to do it. So I think, there are aspects of the $20 is worth it, but there's more to it than just, okay, whether I necessarily made money. It really depends on how that ties into, what you're really looking to do. Is it a continue to help push your career objectives, right? And then also the other part of it is, I think, what do you get out of it personally from a personal satisfaction standpoint, doing what you want to do? Then you're really never at a, complete loss. If you're doing that all the time where ultimately you can't survive, that's a whole nother thing. But the fact of the matter is, like for me, the art of the deal, when you talked about passion, most fun about my idea, thing I like is going to meet potential client for the first time.
Yeah.
Where you get into the excitement of it, regardless of where it is and driving or flying and going, okay, let's go meet this person and find out what the story is. And okay, how do we take this from somebody who never met me before to, okay, you're going to write me a check to go and solve your problems. To me, I think that's, a real interesting process to go through and a lot of satisfaction where someone looks at it and goes, you know what, you can help me and I'm going to pay you for it. And I'm going to pay you some money up front to do it. Yeah. That type of thing. That's where I get the real and go, okay, how do we position this company or this person or a person in the company to where we can maximize success, whatever that definition of success is. That's where I think I get the biggest satisfaction. And a lot of times the flip side of that is you could get on a plane, you could drive somewhere, go meet the client. They soak up in your mind 2 or 3 hours of your time and go, they don't hire you.
Right.
And yeah, there can be a certain degree of frustration that goes with that, but you got to look at it in the context of, okay, would have had a shot at getting this deal had not gone. Right. Or would have done anything, or ultimately, what did you learn? And, you might have learned something else about somebody else's business, and you got to look at that and then move on to the next. So I think, even the $20 thing, I get where some people or Christian might say that but then on the other hand, if it's something you love to do and you go, okay,
yeah,
it probably in the big scheme of things definitely makes sense.
And working because I used to do promotional work for several companies, and it took me about 7 years to get to the point where they would call me and say, hey, we have this event coming up. We want you to manage it. And I'd be like, okay, well then, how much are you paying? Okay, well, I'm going to require this much more, plus a per diem.
Yeah,
and
right.
And they were like, well, I'm like, okay, well, thank you. They're like, no, we didn't say no. And I was like, okay, and you learn your value. And
sure,
sometimes they would say no, and they're like, we're just going to look for somebody else. And I learned the art of dealing for myself, and I think that's
sure. And that that's kind of the self-employed.
Yeah.
Which you have to because you're on an eat what you kill basis.
Yeah.
Right. And that never really changes. I mean, you can, it's like they say, always be selling. You've got to always be selling. I mean, that's really, the nature of the beast. I mean, I even look at my business. What I'm at the point at, 58 right now where you really look at what we do. There's no brand equity in it, right? It's not like you can build it up and go, we've got 100 clients, we can sell this. You're going to be on an eat what you kill basis the rest of your life for doing this business, right? So you cannot ever be under the illusion that in some way, shape, or form someone's going to walk in and go, okay, there's value. The value is what Dave and I bring to it. That's it. It's in us,
right?
So
we're getting down to the last 20 minutes. This is usually the part of the show where I ask my guests to send some words of wisdom up to the listeners. So, Dan and Mackie, what words of wisdom do you have to share?
Oh, interesting. No one's ever asked me that. No one's ever thought I was that wise. Hey, I think it's like anything in, back to what I said before, whatever you're doing, it's find people that are like-minded and support you in the process. Whether that's, you want to, cooking, whether it's working out, whether it's, new venture, even at your existing job. You got to find people that support that. I think if you're somebody younger, older, find a mentor. People that will, and look, that could be 2, 3, 4 different mentors. And then I think my subset of that comment would be, even when I try to give some people advice, I go, look, this is just my perspective. You've got to forge your own thoughts and processes out of what input you get from everybody and go, okay, what fits for me? There is no gospel because for everybody it's different, right? So it's taking, those words of wisdom and I think that's the biggest thing. Or because putting yourself in a situation where you've got people around you that don't support it just drags you down.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing. You see a lot of people that are ultimately successful. There are the ones out there that can just go, okay, you know what? I'm oblivious to everybody else's criticism or bullshit and do it. That does exist. There are people out there that just go, I got a great idea and I'm going down this path and I'm going to, but slowly those people, Gates had Paul Allen. Vice versa. Zuckerberg brought people in around him, even if they were coding at some point that went, okay, yeah, we can do this. It started with different people. And then those are obviously extreme examples that took off into,
right.
But there's other people that ultimately at the end of the day, have had very successful businesses or very successful personally, however you define that, requires you to be, and I think some of the toughest things in life are getting rid of the negative people because there is, that can become the norm. Oh, I'm still getting feedback or I'm getting attention that's a tough thing to step out of because as weird as it sounds, you can see people fall into that, okay, there is some reinforcement here because the attention is being able to break away from that. And I think it's like anything else. I mean, it's, like I said, even working out. Why would you can't be around a lot of people that go, okay, why are you not coming to happy hour and going to the gym? I mean, at some point that gets to be, difficult as an example.
Because I told people, for reasons in the promotional world that I've been in a while, and some people come to me for words of wisdom. I always tell them, being loyal to your family and friends does not mean, or them being loyal to you doesn't mean they're going to give you the best advice. You've got to sometimes step out of that circle to find the right people who know what you're talking about. Does that make sense?
Sure. And I think one thing I'd like to add is educate yourself. We're fortunately, unlike, you and I kind of grew up in a, similar era. We didn't have the access to information there is now.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that, you can get on Google, you can get on anywhere and get so much information about a topic or anything else for free.
Right.
And I think that's the one thing where people don't take the time to educate themselves. Get out there and educate yourself. Get different perspectives, whatever it be. Like I said, whether it's exercise, business, a topic of business, do those types of things. Don't rely on, I personally have got a real pet peeve when so-and-so told me. I go, what the fuck does so-and-so know? That's do they really know, or do they take information in that, actually resonates with them, and therefore it's the gospel? And so I think it's really taking the time to educate yourself and dig deep and go and continue to push yourself from that standpoint and go, okay, I'm well versed in this, and, so on and so, because that's the other part. People want to, move ahead, and they really don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. I was very fortunate that one of my jobs in my early 20s was doing research for an attorney, and we did workers' comp, so I had to do a lot of research on people, and this is way before Facebook or MySpace or any of that. So I learned to go downtown and go to the city hall or go wherever and find records and pull up stuff, and now it just helps me. Now I'm just used to it. Like, I will Google everybody before I talk to them. Let me go back to something you mentioned a little bit, success. What does success mean to you? What's your definition of success?
Good question. Well, for me, I mean, it's the cliche balance. I mean, I'm somebody that physically wants to take care of myself. So there's a couple of decisions I made career-wise where I could have made a lot more money. I mean, a lot more money, had I been willing to give up, basically make that my total priority. And meaning, could have been on a plane, could have been off doing deals, could have been working, 80 hours a week, and go all the time, and could have taken that path probably completely. That there's a certain amount of allure to it because, a lot of money. But then the other part of that was I would have never been truly happy because I've always been kind of a gym junkie, right? That there's a certain, Beth says maybe selfish, and maybe that's not the right word, but, focus for me where, that's a passionate thing for me when I'm working out or running or do whatever. There's just something real Zen-like for me, and I like it, and the way it makes you feel. And I figured out over time, pretty quickly, that having that or that ability to do that and still make a certain amount of money, because I'm really not a materialistic guy. In fact, once I had a $12 pair of Kirkland jeans I used to wear forever. The Beth would go like, "Oh, you look like Mama's jeans." I think they're $12, right? What do I need a pair? She's like, "Hey, I got to toss those things out. I'm taking you." Because she'll tell everybody if she didn't take me clothes shopping, wouldn't have any. And so, probably other than going out to eat, which I like to do, the only thing I spend money on is my gym membership. So, that part was always really important for me, especially as I got older, because I really, in my mind at least, partially rationalized it by, why do I want to retire at 70 and be like a lot of these other guys that are, 30, 40 pounds overweight,
right?
Didn't take care of themselves, and all the stuff they worked hard to enjoy, they can't because physically they're incapable of it, right? Or they're not there and they're riding off. And so there was, I think there's some legitimate, there's some legitimacy to that comment, and obviously some of that self-serving, right? So I can spend more time in the gym, but I did look at it that way and go, okay. And the interesting thing is I had a neighbor one time tell me who years ago, where he did the same thing. And he went, "Hey, I gave up 25 years of my life." And this is when I used to come home early and go to my kid's softball game or something on a Wednesday at 2:30. So I'd take off, and he goes, "You're doing it right." You're doing it. I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I spent 25 years," and he was big exec at, some grocery chain or something. And his kid, he goes, "I barely know this guy." And he goes, and this is probably 10, 12 years ago. So he was my age at this time. He goes, "Now I'm 58 or 60. Don't know this guy, gave up all this, and I'm making more money now because I've got the time and what I know and everything else. And that's a big regret." He goes, "You're doing it right. You can always make more money." So some of those things stood out, and it's probably true because I'm not retiring. Success is just find a balance that works for you. If you can do it, right, is really what works for you, and don't get caught up in everybody else. We're in, especially in OC, we're in a, who's got the right car, who's got the right house, and all that other crap. And I think ultimately, if you got a family, it's, put the time into it, right?
Do you think that makes a difference sometimes? Why people are so afraid of balance is keeping up with the Joneses? Is that still a thing?
No doubt. I mean, I think you look at, let's put it this way. Why does somebody really need to drive a $250,000 car?
Right.
I mean, really, I know some of those guys, but I mean, at the end of the day, what's the value in that? It's an ego thing.
Right.
right? I mean, it's an ego thing. It's not, okay, your environment, it doesn't have to do with all that. That's an ego thing and so on and so forth. But I mean, if you're working hard for that, hey, God bless you. It's your money. I don't,
Right.
But, for me, yeah, no, there's much more to it. I mean, because if you're getting caught up in anybody, look, like a friend of mine used to say, there's always going to be somebody who's better looking, makes more money, has a better looking wife, has a bigger house, da-da-da. He goes, if you're focused on all that shit, you're already losing.
Right.
And I think that's true. I think if you can't just turn around and look and go, okay, this is what works for me. And maybe the car works for that dude. I'm not saying that. But the fact of the matter is you get to a point where you can get comfortable enough about who you are and what makes you tick and not tick. I think that's really how you define success. I mean, and it might not even be monetary, right? Most people look at success and go, automatically they equate it to monetary stuff, or making money. I mean, we all need to make money to survive, don't get me wrong. But I mean, if ultimately that's the only way you tie it to success, maybe that's going to be something at the end of the day, there's diminishing returns or it's short-lived or anything else. For me, it's all about the balance and the personal evolution. I think it's when you take a step back and go, okay, can you be introspective and go, okay, here's how I need to evolve, which I'm been working on for a while. Because when you're in survival mode, a lot of things come out of that. When you're in survival mode, however you want, you got wife, kids, I got to make money, everything else. For me, it was anger. I was just pissed off all the time because I, given up, and you look back on that and you figure out. So I think, for me, that's the other part. Can you continue to evolve and go, okay, I'm not the same guy I was before that maybe I didn't necessarily like, and make some money and make, so on and so forth. So
before we have the last 8 minutes, the anger, because I know that a lot of, like my anger used to be, I was working for AIM Funds, a really big company in Houston. I was moving up. Drugs and alcohol kicked me out of that. It basically fired me. And I used to look back during the rest of my drug use career and be like, if I didn't do this, I'd have that job. If I didn't, and it took me a long time to get over it. And then when I finally said, okay, well, you fucked up, I'll move on. And this was during rehab. And they made me realize, like, you don't know where the rest of your life is going. So why are you still living there? Are there still some hang-ups in your head that you like?
Yeah, of course. I think we're hopefully we're all. You're all at some point able to realize your hang-ups in your head and go, okay, here's what I need to work on. I mean, I think hopefully a lot of people aren't. I mean, I can look back and go, yeah, there's certain things that I, in my family life where I go, yeah, I wish I'd been able to change. I mean, I had. When you got your 12 or 13-year-old daughter come to you and go, I hate you because you're a dick, you're pissed off all the time, everything else, that's a bit of an eye-opener at the time where you're going, okay, because I had a certain level of self-importance, self-righteousness back at the time, too. I was making all the money, I bust my ass, everything else, I should be the priority. I didn't even realize it. I didn't really hone in on it until I gone through some of my own, counseling therapy where I like, oh shit, yeah, you know what? And it took me a while to go, oh, yeah, I was, almost ruined my relationship a couple times, things like that where you go, whoa, where's that coming from?
Right.
And look, I mean, you can't change it. The only way you can change it is by changing now, right? That type of stuff. So I think that, there's always those things that ring through and none of us are a finished product, right? I mean, if you think got it all. As soon as you think you got it all dialed in, you're going to get thrown a curveball anyway, and to me, it's a bad spot to be in. There can be, look, we all want to work towards being content and satisfied, and I think there's elements in your life you definitely should have that. You should have that, otherwise you're going to do some stupid shit. But I think if you get to the point where you're like, okay, like I said, your ego kicks in and I got it all figured out and whatever, then I think that's probably going to be a problem. You got to stay hungry, right? I mean, whether it's career-wise, your personal things, what you do, philanthropy, whatever it may be, I think you've got to, at least I know that is for me. I mean, I'll probably go to my grave trying to do a deal or do something because I don't know if I could sit around. And my wife, I mean, she isn't ever going to sit around. I mean, she's up here energy-wise. I mean, I don't know how she would ever retire, which is in the back of my mind going, okay, you can only clean the house so much, right? Which is part of her therapy. I got to, that's her control box, right?
Yeah, I finally one day had to tell her, like, you've got to slow down a little bit. I can't keep up with this.
Yeah, because she just gets going on. And she's working on it, too. I mean, she's had to come to her own conclusions going, I can't keep going at this. She's 55. Took her that long to go, okay, I can't be, and I can't be solving everybody else's problems. We all come to that, hopefully, at some point.
So before we go, since we're talking business and you've given some awesome, I think, business advice. I think general, it's not just one line of work. I think everybody can take something from everything you've talked about. I know I did. Worst business deal, and what did you learn from it?
Worst business deal. Geez, I'd have to think about that one. We've been pretty successful. And I think we've been pretty successful because we've been discerning. We walked away from certain things where we go, okay. There's elements here where this guy's not, or this owner is not a scrupulous guy. We're just setting ourselves up to fail, or we're not going to partake in that. So I wouldn't say there's anything I've looked and gone.
Well, let's go that way. What did a deal you walked away from, and what did you learn from that?
Well, I think what I learned from it is what one of my short-term mentors always said. Guys that are looking to, use the word defraud or willingly screw up their business or think they're being cute because something's going out the back door or whatever else. It does happen, not very often. But if people spend as much time trying to do it right as they do trying to, find the easy way out, they'd be much further ahead. And I think that's kind of the thing. Just put your head down, try to do it right. I got one other I just popped in my head, and I'll just add this in there. For anybody else out there, and my father-in-law gave me these words of wisdom when I first came down here. My last thing I'd add into that, which is, like I said, off on a bit of a tangent here, but is contacts. Get out and meet people. Get out and, I've had a bunch of people say some real, press the flesh, as one guy would say. Get out and meet people because you never know who you're going to meet. Okay. Right, and that's a big part of it. It's not always necessarily the smartest people that get what they want. It's people that get out there, meet people, and work hard and continue to press it. Because that's the one thing. If you don't know anybody, you don't know what you don't know. And that's another big part of it. So
another word that you brought up often was mentor, and mentors, plural. Why have more than one?
I think they add different things. And a mentor could be somebody you met for 30 minutes, if you're listening. And I've had a couple of those where I've had, people that impart words of wisdom where I go, I had it right now. Guy met 30 minutes in 1993 who had just come in on Friday afternoon. Forget it. I remember it vividly. And he told me he was a big 83 years old. They brought him into the firm I was doing some work with at the time. And I had to meet him because I heard about his reputation, really didn't know what it was. And he said, two things he said to me is never get in a bidding war and never fall in love with a deal. And I've had that come up a couple times over time where I go, wow, never saw him again. I had another guy that I worked on a couple deals where he taught me so many things about just how you present yourself in a business situation. And that was probably a year, a couple others. So I think it's these tidbits over time where maybe they don't resonate at the time, or they do a little bit intellectually, but as far as experientially, down the road, you're like, holy shit, aha, right? Or, oh, wow, that type of stuff. And so I think it's different perspectives add, different things to your arsenal of thought, right? And thought and approach and experience.
So what would be your answer to somebody that tells you, well, my mentor says?
I'd look at them and go, well, what do you think? I'm not interested in what your mentor says. How does that apply to you? How does that apply to you, and what are you going to do with it? Is he or she running your business? Are they doing? What do you think? Why does that make sense to you?
Got it.
And then I want to see what their perspective is about what resonates with them, and go, okay, so what do you do next? And or why did it resonate with you?
Cool. That makes sense. Excellent.
Yeah,
so before we go, if people want to find you and talk to you more or find out what you do, where can they find you?
Probably the business website, www.kershawmackie.com, KERSHAWMACKIE.com, or they can email me, Give them one of my d.mackie@yahoo.com.
Awesome. So, guys, again, as usual, the shows take a turn for them on their own. I was really coming to drill him about his personal life, but just to get some juice, but obviously not.
It's not that exciting. He didn't say.
Yeah, I was like, this is even more. No, and especially for somebody like me who, and I always have to say cancer, because after cancer is when I decided, like, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to my 40s. I don't want to live the rest of my life wondering what if.
Sure.
So any opportunity that knocks on my door, I'm like, sure. Like, and one of my favorite things to say to people is when I'm offered an opportunity, is like, I always tell them, if you think I can do it, then I know I can. Because I'm probably missing out on something that you're seeing. Because I can't look.
Well, I'll say this right now. I'll cut you off, seeing as we don't have a lot of time. I said this to you the other night when you were over for tacos. And I say this more from what I see as kind of my, intuition, what I see intrinsically in my mind, because I see it in some people where I go, wow, that person's got the stand-up comedy is right up your alley.
Thank you.
Because you've got the presence and you've got a great story to tell, right? And back to what I said before, when you look at all the great comedians, right? You know, a lot. Everybody. The other aspect of that is their vein that runs through them, that where they're all talking about. It's all about their lives, right? Certain traumas and things they've had happen in their life, whether it's been depressed or whatever, that allows them to come back and go in a real strange way. They can make humor out of it, and it's probably therapy, I would imagine, for a lot to be able to talk about it and have people kind of spin it into something that can be somewhat comical. So I think combination of who you are, your life experiences, you've got a lot of stuff that could talk about that could be really interesting to people, so on and so forth. Plus you've got a natural delivery, which is rare. A lot of people want to get up and go, I took a class. Well, I think you got to take a ton of classes to be a comedian. Maybe it's not your calling. I think it's back to what I talked about before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no different than any other business. Throw yourself in the deep end, right? Which is get, open mic and try it, and you go, okay, hey, see where it goes. So I think that part, however you got to it, to flip this back on you, I think, look, Rodney could do it at 50. You could do it at 47, and, Rodney created a lot of other you never know where life's going to, take you. But to your point, you just got to get up there, take the mic, and go see what the hell happens.
For those of you tuning in for the first time to the show, I recently took a stand-up comedy class just because I wanted to find a funny way to do my public speaking. I wanted to add some jokes to my public speaking. And part of my set is talking about anal cancer and and my first visit to the doctor with a lot of visuals that comes with it. And people loved it. People, I mean, I guess a butt joke will always come first. It was good. Yeah.
Well, and the best part about it is your own butt joke.
Yeah, I make an ass of myself, so there you go. Yeah. So for everybody, I'll post that online. Go check out the Put It Together page, or go to my YouTube page and you'll find the video. It's about 6 minutes of my set, and you'll check it out. But I ever since then I'll be driving and I'm like, oh, that's funny. And I'll hit the record on my phone so I could record the basics of the joke, and then I'll get home and I'm trying to figure out how to make it funny or make it a set. So yeah, because I've heard some people that are not very funny, and I'm like, if you can make it, I'm sure I could do it. I'm an idiot, so I'm sure I can get up there and be stupid and be funny. Anyway, I'm rambling now.
You're funny now, so there you go. Because I'm laughing, just so you know, I'm laughing inside.
Oh, we always laugh at each other when I come over here anyway. Yeah. So, Dana, thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you, sir. You've been asking me to do this for a while. My pleasure.
Not only are you one of my favorite people, but I just love you, man.
Thank you. Likewise.
I always
so make it in comedy. Then you know what? You can give me something else to do. I can manage your career.
You heard it here first, folks. You heard it here first.
I could be your watchdog.
Yeah, my heckler at the.
No, I won't heckle. No. I'll just get Hey, he needs to be paid more.
Oh, I could totally use that.
Yeah.
We'll talk after after.
He's talking about anal cancer. We want more money.
He's making an ass of himself out there.
Yeah.
All right, everybody out there, thank you so much for listening. Dana, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
I'd like to thank my producer, Mr. Kevin Warriors, for all his help and support. Thank you, sir. Go check us out at abnormalentertainment.com, where you can find all the shows on the network. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can find what I'm up to and what my guests are doing and all the updates. For now, thank you, Dana. Thank you, Mr. Moyers. Thanking you guys for listening. This is Daniel Garza saying, hey, put it together.
This is how I put it together.
This is how I put it together.
This is how I put it together.
Subscribe to Put It Together on iTunes, Stitcher, and at abnormalentertainment.com/putittogether. Find Put It Together on Facebook and tweet Daniel at Lil Messican, LILMESICAN. And for more podcasts, comics, books, movies, and more, head to abnormalentertainment.com.
You've been listening to the Abnormal Entertainment Network.